Context is never going to be totally irrelevant. And depending on the brand and depending on what the objectives of the campaign are, context can continue to have relevance. Having said that, you have to understand that starting in like 1996, 97, we shifted primarily to audience buying, even in linear television. As soon as we went to systemic optimization, right, when we built reach and frequency based on a hill climbing methodology, that was pure audience. We began to select channels, we began to select day parts by the audiences that they drew and the way that they deduplicated against other day parts. I mean, we literally at one time mapped every television program in geometric space to see how much overlap each one had against the other, right? That was a pure audience play. And, you know, beginning back then, the stuff that relied on context was more the exception than the rule.
In the guise of that, when you think about how you did business back then, is really audience buying, it's always been audience buying, it sounds like, to some extent, and now it's just a matter of understanding the fragmentation of that audience so that you can still buy an audience? Is that fair to say, or?
Okay, so no, it wasn't always audience buying. I mean, at one time, you bought specific programs and specific titles. We still do, by the way. I mean, when you transact, you get a specific spot in a specific program. But at one time, we bought those specific programs as a proxy for the target audience we wanted. And based on the contribution, the hypothetical contribution of that program to a specific reach curve. We didn't have the quantitative stuff because Nielsen didn't release respondent level data that is required for optimizers, okay? To some extent, granularity of data and proliferation of media channels, what that does is it affords you the opportunity to re-aggregate your reach. What used to be a 3-channel environment or a 4-channel environment is now a multi-100-channel environment, and you have to build your reach back up. And certain channels and certain programs have unique audiences that, when added up, re-aggregate the reach quite nicely. And of course, that's done on a price-sensitive basis. So it's you have an optimizer that is always seeking the next lowest incremental reach point. Okay, lowest cost incremental reach point.
When you think about that hyper-personalized, hyper-contextualized individual creative being served, is that something that you think is coming down the pike? Is that real life? Is it science fiction? And if not, what does it look like in the future?
I think it's almost ancient history, actually, right? So, I mean, we do it in the digital space all the time. We manage the e-commerce sites for a couple of clients, and we do dynamic creative optimization on the fly based on each individual's specific purchase history, right? In the television world, we quite haven't gotten to that, but a company called Visible World, in which WPP invested, I would guess 15 years ago approximately, Visible World gives you something called creative versioning. So the creative is developed in little segments, and the segments are assembled on the fly based on data points. Just to give you an example, you have a large retail department store. I'm going to make it up. Let's use Sears as an example. They're not a client, right? You have a generic opening. If it's a cold climate, you do a snowblower. If it's a warm climate, you do a lawnmower. And if you're not sure whether it's one or the other, you do a power drill, right? And then you have a generic close. So that's creative versioning, right? Could you do creative versioning if an automotive manufacturer had cars at 5 different price points? Yeah, you could decide that by zip plus 4, based on average income in that geography, you could sell the right car line at the right price point, right? Mm-hmm. I could give you many more examples, but it exists. It's been in place for at least 15 years.